Welcome, everybody, to the Ring Generals podcast. I am Nick Nenad, and alongside me today is the RKJ Man.
Let's talk that talk, y'all hypocritical Nick. Thank you, Tony Khan. Woo-hoo.
Yeah, guys, that's going to be the topic of our podcast today. We're just going to be talking pro wrestling / sports entertainment, almost pro wrestling versus sports entertainment, because we had the biggest shift in the professional wrestling business really since, I don't know, RKJ, Nash and Hall showed up on WCW, Hogan turned and joined the NWO. I mean, we have a changing of the guard in the wrestling business, and guys, we just want to talk about it. We know you wrestling fans out there know what's going on, and we're going to give our opinions because we haven't given our opinions yet. You know, we wanted to see what happened before we got back on here, and we're back on here. I was also dealing with some eye issues too. That's the non-kayfabe reason why we were not able to do it. My eye was closed shut for a couple of days last week, so I was not able to get on this podcast. But we are back now. I'm feeling good. You guys probably can't even recognize what's going on with it, so I'm not going to get too close to the camera, but you know, it's going to be a good podcast. RKJ, how are we feeling? How are we feeling today? It feels a little different now in the wrestling business, doesn't it?
Oh, it feels fantastic. First of all, I'm going to get drunk later on today. We have
Nice.
football season coming. And, you know, usually I say this. So usually when this time of the year comes, I lose a little bit focus off of pro wrestling because it just sucks during this time. And then I focus on football. But now my eyes are in all different type of directions. What happened over the past couple of weeks, even when we were in Vegas with CM Punk showing up, which we really didn't get to dive into with the CM Punk showing up in AEW thing. What's happened in pro wrestling has been fan-fucking-tastic, and we've needed it for a very long time. And seeing outlets like SportsCenter and all these other outlets kind of talking about CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Adam Cole baby showing up, all these major sites, Ruby Soho, all these major sites talking about it, who normally just stick to mainstream pro wrestling and WWE, and now they're talking about the little promotion going up, AEW. It's huge, and it's a big thing for the industry.
Yeah, no, I mean it's something that we didn't think would happen. I feel like this quickly, right? Like there's a shift that's happened, in the last, I don't know, 3-4 months maybe, that's been just way different with WWE and then AEW ever since really WrestleMania. Like AEW slowly progressed. The writing's been a bit better, even though some of the TV shows for Dynamite haven't been the best. You have the debut of Rampage, you know, about a month ago, a little over a month ago. Then you've been hearing the rumors about CM Punk. You've been hearing the rumors about Bryan Danielson. We get surprised with Adam Cole pretty much the week before it happens. We know about Bray Wyatt, Easy Eric Santos, who might be joining us later. He's dealing with a little technical issues on his side, but we need to get this thing going. So he might be here later, and I'll get more of his opinion on that. But me and him talked about Bray Wyatt possibly joining, or Wyndham Rotunda, which his name most likely will be when he gets to AEW, if he does join AEW. And all these different names, you know, and then even this week, we're hearing of two other names that might want to join AEW, fan favorites, stuff like that. So, yeah, I just feel like there's been a big change in the wrestling business, and I'd say mostly the last 2 months, and almost all of what WWE's done the last, I don't know, year has been overshadowed completely, and nobody's thinking about WrestleMania, and nobody's thinking about SummerSlam, because one of the guys that was in the WrestleMania main event is in AEW now. You know, so it's just a crazy. RKJ, could you imagine saying that the last 20 years? That the guy in the main event of WrestleMania was with a different company less than a year later?
No, TNA was the closest that tried to compete post WCW, but they had a terrible infrastructure. I think we can all agree they should have not moved to Monday nights at the time. It was just terribly organized and terribly ran. The thing that gives me hope with AEW, unlike TNA, is because they have a competent owner who's there every single day. Yeah. And it's funny, Tony Khan actually mentioned that. He said in an interview, he said, man, if Ted Turner was there every single day in day-to-day operations working with Eric Bischoff, I truly believe probably WCW would have lasted much longer. Maybe it would still be around in some capacity today. But because Ted Turner is such a big media mogul, he didn't have time to worry about WCW. He was like, hey, give it to Eric Bischoff and let Eric Bischoff run it. And eventually things kind of happen. And we know the story of WCW pretty much. So Tony Khan's involved in this every day. Now, my only concern is something that I have to deal with every day as a manager at my store, a budget. What is the budget for AEW moving forward? You're signing all this talent from WWE. Kevin Owens could possibly come on, allegedly. Sami Zayn's contract is up sooner than expected, allegedly. Those talents, you have to think, are primed for All Elite Wrestling. So, with that being said, the budget is going to get more tighter and more tighter and more tighter if you're giving these guys more money. So, the people that we've seen in AEW who were signed originally, let's think of the people who have kind of underperformed. The first person, honestly, with all due respect, that has come to my mind who's underperformed has been Joey Janela. So he will be a guy on the chopping block. We would see maybe a Scorpio Sky on the chopping block. We would see a few others, Sonny Kiss, a few other people who are original mainstays of AEW. Tony Khan's going to have to make some tough decisions in the next year to 2 years when their contracts come up, because it's a situation, or even like Jim Ross or Chris Jericho. He's going to have to make some tough decisions because you can't keep all these people if you're hiring these WWE guys, and pretty soon it's going to get fluctuated. And then also I have to wonder how people like Jungle Boy are feeling. Does he think, or MJF, does he think that, hey, it's a situation where all these WWE guys are coming in, they're kind of taking my spot. Am I really going to have an opportunity to grow in this company? So that's the only major concern that I'm really worried about when it comes to AEW. Will the budget become a problem, and will it get a little bit more tighter and tighter, and will it lead to some unexpected releases that WWE picks up and runs?
Yeah, I mean, that realistically is the only thing, right, that will hold back AEW from being extremely successful in this pro wrestling industry. Because what else? What other sports, you could stack your team all day, all that you want, but no, there's a salary cap. So you do wonder how much they could bring in. Obviously, there's the issue of, like you mentioned, also the talent. There's going to be certain talent that aren't getting over. They don't get enough spots. Now, I think that's just, life, right? Like if you're not getting over as a talent and there's other guys that are getting over, I don't really blame the other guys for getting over. And unless they were getting shoved down our throats into our spots and we didn't like them, right? But like everybody wants to see Bryan Danielson, everyone wants to see Adam Cole, everyone wants to see the Elites, everyone wants to see, John Moxley, whatever you want to call it, right? What I do think, RKJ, maybe that we'll see in the future is a way of cutting costs, if that's even an issue. I mean, these guys are billionaires we're talking about too, multi hundreds of $1 million heirs, right? So maybe there really isn't a budget. Like maybe Tony Khan is just spending all of his money on AEW because he doesn't really spend any of his own money on Fulham and the Jaguars. He's just hired in the role there, right? Like he's not the owner of the Jaguars or Fulham, which is the other things he does. He's the owner of AEW, right? So like he technically is the guy he's the Vince, right? So maybe there isn't. But let's say, like you were saying, because this is a topic of discussion, there is a salary cap. Maybe we see the Forbidden Door close a bit. We don't see the Minoru Suzuki's coming in as often. We don't see New Japan talent, getting paid off to come. Maybe we see a lot of those Impact talents go away, right? And they go back to Impact where they were. I personally don't think there's much of a budget, and pro wrestling doesn't pay that much anyways to where we think about the net worth of Tony Khan and Shad Khan, and I don't think that's that big of a deal. You're giving a guy $2 million to wrestle for you for 3-4 years. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever it is, $8 million. Like when you look at professional sports, like those guys get paid way more. So I really don't think the budget's that big of a deal. I would say the bigger issue is the spots on the card, especially with only one show. Well, one main show.
Well, yeah, one main show. Then you have Rampage, which is 1 hour, which I have to think eventually, with the way they're promoting it and the ratings that it's getting, it's going to get to 2 hours. Then you have Dark and Dark Elevation. So that's fantastic. But the roster is starting to get big. And I'm starting to notice it. Like 2 years ago, man, it was like, man, this roster is kind of slim. I feel like I'm getting rematches a couple weeks in a row. Now you're looking at it, it's like, man, we can just do infinite matches. Like, what type of match you want? Like, I remember on the way back home from Vegas, me and you were just booking CM Punk and Bryan Danielson's like first 6 months, and we had completely different people. So it's one of those things that's a great thing, but I do have a concern about that. And then you look at, over in WWE with Nick Khan. Ever since Nick Khan has come in, that thing has changed completely. And now I'm reading that they're cutting the catering budget now. Like, catering's not even there anymore. So now you're gonna fire wrestlers. You're gonna give them a crappy work environment, crappy creative, and you won't even feed these people. Like, I don't even understand what's going on in WWE. But the concern is, and some people can say, well, it's because of them possibly selling to Disney. But the concern is, if a $1 billion business like WWE is cutting costs like we're in a war with WCW in 1996, then what's going on here? What's eventually going to happen to AEW, who doesn't have the resources right now, doesn't have the name value that WWE has?
Well, I'll say this. Look at the Dallas Cowboys, for example. Okay, this is not a shot on anybody that I know or anything like that. This is legitimate, actual, factual. He's probably watching football.
Go 6-11 this year. You'll go 6-11.
Not too far off. Not too far off what I predicted.
6-11 and won't even make the playoffs in that shitty division.
Oh man. But let's look at the Dallas Cowboys. Okay. They are valued potentially as in the United States as the largest. Like, if they were to be sold today, they would sell for the most money. They're the most valued franchise in sports today. And when was the last time they won a championship? Was it 88? 90?
1990s.
90s. Okay. So over 20 years at least. And they had the biggest budget, right? Realistically, I mean, they could have. Now, there's a salary cap in the NFL, but like, they've had the ability and the name brand and the spectacle and the stadium and all that stuff, and they haven't won anything. They haven't done anything great for over 20 years. So I don't really care that WWE, if they go to Disney, you have to have the performers, right? And I think the thing right now, RKJ, is the performers are all going to AEW. And when you think about the top performers in WWE, a lot of them are fucking old. Like, Randy Orton is old. AJ Styles, old. Brock Lesnar, old. Bobby Lashley, old. Drew McIntyre, he's not young, right? He's not like a 23-year-old MJF or a Jungle Boy, right? None of the top guys in WWE are young. Seth Rollins, that's an exception, right? And Roman Reigns.
They young as like they used to be. They're in the mid-30s now.
True. And but you got about 10 years left. That's in pro wrestling terms. Adam Cole is in his early 30s, and we consider him about 15 years left in the business, right?
30.
Yeah. So the thing is with WWE, I just don't care that they're going to sell their company to Disney or Fox or whoever, because they have to have the talent. And what we saw in the last 2-3 weeks, and specifically a month, is the top talent that everyone loves and everyone considers the top talent is going to AEW. They are going to the Buffalo Bills. They're going to the Seattle Seahawks. They're going to the New England. No, I won't say New England Patriots. That's a bad example. They're going to the Cleveland Browns. Like, how good is the Cleveland Browns roster this year, right? So they're not going to those teams anymore. They're going to other teams. They don't care about the name brand. Even the Patriots haven't gotten a lot of good players lately either. They have a good roster, but none of the stars, right? They don't have Aaron Rodgers on their team, right? So I just think that, with WWE, it doesn't matter if they sell. They need to do a better job of creating an in-ring product that people want to see. And they're not doing that because everyone that could do that for them is leaving.
So here's the situation with the Dallas Cowboys, and let's play shit on the Dallas Cowboys today on the opening day of the NFL season. I love doing it anyway. We can promote it and talk shit about Jared Smith again, okay? So let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. What's the problem with the Cowboys is they give big money to people who really don't deserve it.
Very good point, yep.
So it's a situation now where they are going to get cash strapped. So now when your top guy, like Dak Prescott, who's your money-making guy, comes and says, hey, I need to make money, you get embroiled in this whole issue, which has happened for about a year or so before he got signed, and then you end up overpaying. So they're going to have to make some cap decisions in the future. Like, I don't believe Ezekiel Elliott's going to be there for too much longer. He's falling off. Oh my God, Eric Santos.
There he is, with the GCW shirts.
Oh.
Hold on a second, guys.
Let's rock.
You're good, man. We are live right now, Eric.
You're right.
So, Eric, what we're talking about right now is
Dallas Cowboys.
I compared the Dallas Cowboys or the New York Yankees and those type of teams to WWE, and I said that the Dallas Cowboys haven't won a world championship in over 20 years, even though they've been the most valued franchise. So what I'm saying is you have to have the talent on the field if you're the Cowboys to be able to win a Super Bowl. WWE doesn't have the talent on the field right now, even though they have the top name brand in professional wrestling. So RKJ Man was talking about them selling and Nikon and all that stuff, and I was saying that it doesn't matter if WWE sells to Disney or Fox. You still have to have the talent, and within the last month, the top talent's all going to AEW. So let me, RKJ, before you get back to your Cowboys thing, I want to give Eric's, what's your opinion on this whole thing right now? AEW getting all the guys, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole, possibly Bray Wyatt, possibly Kevin Owens, and WWE letting those guys go, essentially.
Well, if I can probably quote Mick Foley, Mick Foley said that there was a little video that he did. It was actually him saying along the lines of, I'm trying to remember that WWE has got a problem because they're not the company where they would have talent. I remember there was a time from NXT from like 2014 and 2015 where they acquired a lot of wrestlers, like a lot of the indie guys from Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, and New Japan, so on and so on. And you can totally tell that at the time, NXT was like the best place to have all the talent and also build talent. Until the years started progressing, you start to see a lot of these guys. I'm not saying a lot, like, most of them, but I'm saying, like, I'm not saying like all of them. I'm saying like, most of them, some of these guys, what they did was that they either got pushed and then they squandered them away, and then they push them and then they put them down. It's just an overall cycle over and over. And so I think for wrestlers, they saw that pattern. And the problem is that a lot of these wrestlers, they saw that, hey, look, if I'm going to sign with these guys for the next, 2 or 3 years, either they're going to squander me, or number two, they're going to turn me into a joke. It's one of those things, and I'm never going to get either pushed like the main event of WrestleMania, or going to get like a top match at the main event card, whatever pay-per-view they have. So I think that's the thing, is that's the problem that a lot of these wrestlers they have right now, is that probably Adam Cole he looked forward, said that, all right, what are they going to do to me for the next 2 years? And what are they going to do to NXT? Now that we have McMahon and Pritchard along. And so what's going to happen to that brand, and what's going to happen to me? So I think what they did was that they had to look forward, and they had to see, all right, this is what they're going to do to me. They're talking to me like everything is cool, everything is calm. Like they said, it's a great conversation that we're having, me and McMahon. But really in the background, you see guys like Tony Khan probably dressed up in a black cloak, and they're like waiting and waiting just for guys to like sign that deal so we can just turn you into a joke. And it's like, I feel like at this point we're like, Nick Khan's like making WWE fail in a way. So that could be another reason why. But I can see why a lot of these wrestlers are going somewhere else, to AEW, or also in this case, a guy like Matt Cardona making a name for himself in Impact Wrestling and GCW as of late. And we all know what happened with Matt Cardona and Jon Moxley. So a lot of things are happening more on the outside, like the party's more on the outside of WWE. So I think that's why a lot of these wrestlers, they want to go to where all the party's at.
Yeah, well, no, and that's the thing. It's like, do you want to go to the team that has a lot of restrictions, and you got to do this and you got to do that? Oh, you can't do that, but you can do this. You do it our way, right? Or do you want to go to the team that says, hey, whatever makes you the best player you can be, do that. Be that. Yeah, we might have a little restrictions here and there. Like you can't make fun of certain things when you're doing your promos, coming out rapping, and you can't do, but like realistically, like, you're good though. Besides that, you're good. And you kind of practice however you want to. We're not going to tell you how to practice. Do what you do is best. And that's what AEW is doing. The positive side of that, the negative side is what WWE is doing. All the restrictions, not feeding people, So like that. Eric, did you know that WWE took away catering?
Yeah, I do know. So
am I the only one that doesn't know this?
So so they took away catering. You're not allowed to use the U word called union. You're not allowed to have your Twitch account be promoted or YouTube account. You can't. So basically, they're attacking freedom of speech or what? Or what's going on around here?
Oh, I mean, there's no freedom of anything in WWE.
So
you could probably say racist shit in that company and they wouldn't even care. So, I mean, well, actually, people have.
You can't. Yeah.
Bring
him back to be the host of WrestleMania. Good job, guys.
Look, so I think Nick is pretty much in that. Since we're talking about this, I guess we look at the WWE as the New England Patriots. Then 20 years they've had this dynasty and everything's been going great. But once top people start leaving, they don't know how to react, and now they suck again. Maybe they'll suck. Maybe they'll be better this year. I don't know. We'll see. But it's a situation with this whole situation now is the tide is turning, and Daniel Bryan and them have mentioned it in their post media like scrum after All Out. They said, man, just what we're seeing on television with the crowd and how fun it is, like we just cannot leave that. Like we can't. It drawed us over to AEW. So it's just a situation for them where they have to go over there and see how it is. And you get that environment, you get that feel. It's a love of professional wrestling. And that's something you're not seeing. Whereas in the WWE, you're doing all this stuff to me. And then on top of that, you won't feed me. Like, there's one thing that I love the most is food. And if I was still in WWE hanging on by dear life, if they took my food away from me, that'd be the last straw. I'll be out.
Well, big question for you, RKJ. Is the catering any good? I want to ask that. Is the food any good over there?
What I saw in the documentaries, that thing looked like the best all-you-can-eat buffet you can ever get. And y'all know how I feel about all-you-can-eat buffet.
But every week, don't they try to spice it up a bit? Try to change it up because it could be boring after a while.
I don't know. I don't know if it was the missionary of catering, but all I know is very, very extensive and it looked very good. But now they've stripped it down to, I believe, arena catering. So it's been a disaster, although I heard they're going to try to make a move to try to fix it up and do better. But there's just things that are going on in the WWE that I don't understand. But Eric, what I was trying to mention with the Cowboy reference is that eventually AEW is going to have to make a move and cut some people. Not everybody in AEW is going to stay on once their contract is up in a year or 2 years. So my concern, Eric, is that eventually, because of the budget, and I get wrestling doesn't have a salary cap, but because of the budget that Tony Khan has, and because you're not a media conglomerate like WWE just yet, and WWE is making those cuts, will Tony Khan eventually have to make those cuts because of all these big moves he's doing? I mean, he's bringing in all these people at such a rapid pace. It's going to become a situation where he's going to look around. It's going to be bloated with a lot of WWE guys. Some of those old original AEW guys are going to have to get dropped.
Yeah, that is another thing that I've been trying to think about is that, yeah, you're signing all these guys, but then it's like, what's going to happen to your homegrown guys like MJF and Jungle Boy, Adam Hangman Page, and as far as we love these returns, I actually enjoyed the feud between MJF and Jericho and the Pinnacle and the Inner Circle. Miro and Eddie Kingston, they've been having a pretty good solid feud as well. So there's been so many other things that have been kind of capturing my attention than the debuts of Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson. Don't get me wrong, I loved their debuts. It was awesome. I just felt like the matches just spoke for itself, they delivered. I think a lot of fans, they probably missed out on that, and that the fans should probably more appreciate the matches a little bit more because we had solid matches on All Out. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, All Out was a ridiculous pay-per-view, and I mean, RKJ, I know you. Do you consider All Out the WrestleMania of AEW? Yeah. Well, that's sure what it looked like, right? I'll agree with you now. That's sure what it looked like. Now, I think they got lucky with all the timing of everything, realistically, but I think All Out might end up being the WrestleMania. I think you got that one right, buddy. I think you got it right.
And then Double or Nothing is the SummerSlam.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. Now, I mean, we don't want to. I mean, we don't want to promote anybody getting cut, but is there anybody on the fringe right now in AEW that we're saying to ourselves, hey, buddy, you got to step it up immediately? Because if you don't step it up, once your contract comes up, I mean, I don't know if they're going to keep you. You know what I'm saying? Is there anybody that we're saying? My first person, and this is gonna hurt a lot of people. Eric, I know you're wearing the shirt GCW, is Joey Janela. I feel like Joey Janela in AEW is underperformed. Now,
I haven't heard from him. I haven't heard from him in a while.
Yeah, I don't know what the reason. I heard he turned dark on heel on Sunny Kiss on Dark, and nobody and their mom cared about it. Not a single soul cared about Joey Janela turning heel on Sunny Kiss. So the question is do people what's going to happen for people like Joey Janela moving forward for the next year or 2 years before their contract comes up? And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because allegedly WWE is keeping an eye out on some talents contracts in AEW that can come up in a year or two. And I can just guess some people off the top of my head they're looking at. MJF, Jungle Boy, Darby Allin. Those are 3 guys right there. So are we looking at people? Are there people that we're looking at who could be on the fringe, who hasn't really been utilized to their full potential that, hey, in a year or 2, we might cut them?
For me, I mean, RKJ, I know we literally went through the roster a couple weeks ago, but even when we did that, I've noticed a couple things within the last month or whenever we talked about that, where I was like, oh, that guy does this, that guy's part of this, that guy's on Being the Elite, he's all this stuff. And so for me, I just think it's anybody that really can't get to the main roster, right? If you're stuck on Dark and Dark Elevation and you're never getting any TV time and the crowd doesn't care about you, you're going to get cut, right? I think their roster is actually still small enough to where they don't have to worry about cuts. Because I do think, like RKJ said earlier, Eric, you didn't hear this, but RKJ thinks that Rampage eventually should be a 2-hour show. I agree with that because they have too much talent. And Rampage already goes way too quick. I already feel like I need the extra stuff. Now, it works out with SmackDown and then Rampage. But AEW doesn't want you watching SmackDown. They want you watching their own stuff. So I think that eventually Rampage probably needs to be on a different night realistically. And it needs to be, a 2-hour show. And so that you're looking forward to 2 AEW shows and there's more content, there's more matches and all that stuff. And, so I don't think their roster is big enough right now to where they have to cut people. I think there will be people that they cut that maybe just the creativeness behind them they don't have, but I don't think budget wise they need to cut people yet. Maybe a year from now, yes, but right now, no. And especially if they end up becoming, the top pro wrestling company in the world, if WWE is sold and that just does not go well, AEW could end up being the show that gets 3 million viewers every week or 4 million viewers, and then they don't have to care about this. They're the one company. Right. And they've already shared their people with Impact and New Japan and stuff like that. So, I do disagree with one thing you said, RKJ. I don't not disagree, but I don't think that the guys you mentioned are ever going to go to WWE. I think they would go to New Japan and Impact a lot quicker than they would go to WWE. I think Joey Janela would be happy to be on New Japan Pro Wrestling shows occasionally and be the headliner of GCW shows every week. Because GCW is, although it's extreme hardcore wrestling, it is the premier independent company right now. It's the only one that's really running a true independent style every couple of weeks that is in the mainstream and has actual stars going to it, right? You have the MLWs, you have the Ring of Honors, but those are just almost, it seems like, developmental. GCW has some fucking established people that everyone would love to see in both WWE and AEW. The Effies, the Alex Zanes, the Jake Atlas. I know Jake Atlas was just with NXT, but Jake Atlases, even Nick Gage. Obviously, that doesn't work that well with most things, but go on. Jordan Oliver, all these top guys, right? So. Yeah, I just think WWE had, like Mick Foley said, WWE has a problem, man. The talent doesn't want to be in WWE anymore, and I think that's their biggest problem. I don't think it's AEW having too little of money or too big of a roster. I think WWE just doesn't have the talent, and they're just signing all old guys. I'll say one more thing, and then we can maybe turn to something else in this discussion. But when you look at the main events of WWE's top shows, the last, the big shows. You look at SummerSlam, Goldberg is in one of the main events. John Cena is in one of the main events. I'm not going to count the women because the women's stuff's pretty good. WWE has the best women's division, and I think we can all agree with that. But even when you look at the rest of you look at WrestleMania, Edge, Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan isn't even with the company anymore, right? You have Bobby Lashley, who's a lot older, right? He's in the main event, one of the main events. Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt, The Fiend. Well, Randy Orton's too old, and The Fiend is not with the company anymore, right? And you keep on going. You keep on going. Last year's SummerSlam or whatever. Like it's always going to be something like an old guy. And then next WrestleMania, The Rock. That's not a current talent. That's not Darby Allin. That's not Jungle Boy. That works.
That's a different situation.
It fucking works.
That works right there.
But that ain't gonna. But RKJ, that ain't gonna work for a year. Right?
It's not gonna work for a year, but it's gonna work for WrestleMania. It's gonna get the buzz off AEW for. Let's be honest here. When The Rock comes back, we will be having major conversations about The Rock. And like I said, you will see the Black Cowboy, the RKJ Man, in Dallas, Texas next year. It's confirmed. It's gonna happen. Front row seats, by the way.
RKJ, another football reference for you. It almost feels like WWE and this Rock thing feels like the Packers, doesn't it? Feels like it's a Super Bowl or bust, right? They're like, oh, we're going all out and we're gonna put the Rock, and then we're fucked, and we don't have anything. And then we got Roman Reigns, and we got McIntyre and Rollins, and maybe AJ Styles, but he's like 55 years old. Like, what are they going to go to after The Rock?
They don't have much, and that's their fault for not building and creating stars. Now, the one thing I have hope for with AEW is these stars coming in: Adam Cole, Bryan Danielson, CM Punk. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think Kevin Steen will come to AEW. El Generico will be in AEW. If you don't know who those people are, just look them up. You know them, definitely. I promise you. I think eventually those people will be able to pass the torch over to the newer talent and be like, you are running this company. So I do eventually believe there is money in an MJF and CM Punk feud. There is so much money. I wanted it to start yesterday on Dynamite, but they clearly have seeds for other things. And obviously CM Punk's going to go on with Hobbs. But he had mentioned it. Punk had said this in all his interviews and even on Dynamite. He's like, there's so much young talent here. I want to work with them and I want to help them grow and develop. I don't want my passion for professional wrestling and how it got stumped out to happen to them. So I think that is the benefit, and that's the hope that I have, that when AEW is getting all these big talent acquisitions, that they're going to be able to give back to AEW, and that these stars like the MJF and the Darby Allins and the Jungle Boys will become the top superstars in AEW in 3 to 5 years.
Well, by the way, they already are. Like, that's the crazy thing is, like, WWE, I mean, you look at the young guys, like the really young guys. Like, can you even think of one off the top of your head? Like, I can't even think of like a super young superstar in WWE that's like in the top main events, right? Like, I'm looking at like the WrestleMania card from this year. Besides like Bianca Belair, like that's one, and then they fucking buried her at SummerSlam.
I wouldn't count. She's, I wouldn't count Bianca Belair either.
But she's a very young star. Like,
she's a young star.
Yeah, very, very young. That's what I mean. Don't look at the creative behind it, because obviously WWE doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. But like,
we haven't even talked about how Bianca Belair and this whole Becky Lynch thing is a disaster.
It's a product of this whole thing of like WWE. You have CM Punk return, and both him and Darby look good, right? CM Punk doesn't bury Darby Allin in the middle of the ring, right? Because he's CM Punk.
I think he let him showcase.
CM Punk actually looked like shit a lot of times in that match. Not physically, but like he looked like he was gonna lose a bunch of times. Like, I was like, oh, he's gonna lose this match, Jesus, So, and then you look at MJF. Like, how close was MJF to ending Chris Jericho's career?
Yeah.
That close. I was cheering for. I'm like, I don't want that young guy, but like, that's what you want, MJF is a star. Darby Allin's a star. Jungle Boy's the guy everybody calls out when they come to the company. It's crazy. Those guys are already stars. WWE, they're in NXT and they got a new colorful logo, right? And it's gonna be a whole thing, right? I'll say this too. Let's turn the tide to just the strategy of both companies now too. Obviously, I think we can all agree it seems like WWE is on the selling block. Like the stuff with the catering, the stuff with the releases, the stuff with really not caring about the fans seems like we just want to make the most money so Vince McMahon and us can all make the money and we'll all leave the company. Like that's what it seems. So after that happens, the creative process is what they're saying is we're going to get professional athletes essentially and turn them into pro wrestlers. Okay. And AEW is like, we're going to recreate pro wrestling, right? Like that's essentially the way the two companies are going, right? You have, one that's trying to develop non-wrestlers into wrestlers. And there's another company that's making the actual pro wrestlers better pro wrestlers, right? I'll say this. The reason I don't think WWE, that plan is going to work is because the one guy they did that with in the modern era was Braun Strowman, and AEW wanted none of him. They didn't even want him, right? Like he's the one guy that was pretty successful in WWE. It's mind-boggling why he got released still. But he's the one guy that was a power lifter, a non-professional wrestler that they turned him into a professional wrestler, and he turned into a world champion, right? In the modern era. I'm not talking about Brock. I'm not talking about The Rock. These guys back in the day that were all like something else, and then they turned into whatever, But Braun Strowman, and he's been released for a while, right? And he's not in AEW. Because AEW is like, you're not good. Like, you're not a pro wrestler. You don't know what you're doing. Like, you don't fit our style. You're a sports entertainer. You need truck sounds when you're running around the ring to be successful, right? You're a sports entertainer. And I think that's example number one of why this strategy with WWE is not going to work. What do you guys think about WWE's strategy compared to AEW's?
I think WWE can get away with it for a little while longer because they have such a unique and big brand. Now, what I think is going to happen, and I've seen this for years, is I think Disney is going to buy WWE eventually. I don't know when it's going to be, but I think that day is coming. But I do think Vince McMahon will stay in control of WWE creative, and he'll make that an essential part of negotiations. I have to run creative booking until the day he dies. But after that, it's anybody's guess and anybody's ball game as to what's going to happen with WWE. I mean, prayers up to Triple H, and what happened to him and what we found out yesterday. But if his health is not good and he's saying, oh, they're cutting NXT and all these changes are happening and I don't have control and now my health is a factor, he could walk away. Or I've even seen people say, what if Triple H went to AEW and worked with Tony Khan or started his own company? So I really don't know what the future of WWE is, but I mean, they could last for a few more years just on the name alone. I think we can all agree Wrestlemania sells itself. I mean, when you have top stars, that even elevates it. Like next year, I think, in my opinion, and I've said this 1 billion times on this podcast, The Rock and Roman Reigns, it'll be the biggest WrestleMania event of all time. They'll sell the shit out of that. They'll get a lot of pay-per-view buys, a lot of exposure. But after that, what else do you have? So it's a situation for me where it's like, how long can you get by on the brand? And then it also depends on how much can AEW grow and develop. And eventually, if AEW continues this momentum, I could see TNT coming to them with a contract, more money, and being like, we want to put you up against WWE. And the proof is in the pudding. And the ratings came out earlier, and AEW last night beat Raw in the 18-49 demo this week.
Fucking shit. I was wondering. So the Dynamite beat Raw in the 18-49
demo. It beat it. Now, granted, I want to see what happens over the next couple of weeks. I want to see if this trend continues or if it's a trend of Monday Night Football issue, if it was because of Labor Day, all those things could be.
Well, RKJ, though, there's no Monday Night Football this week, though. That's the thing. There was no football this week. So
it was Labor Day, though. It was Labor Day.
That's a good point. Yeah. I forgot about that. And also AEW is coming off a giant pay-per-view where they debuted a bunch of new guys. Take it with a grain of salt. If AEW beats Raw next week, that's a little different. And I get Monday Night Football, and that's fine. But people have DVRs. You can also look at the DVR stuff and all that stuff. But I do think that this is significant And don't go up against him yet. Do not go against him yet. That's why I like Rampage after SmackDown and AEW Dynamite not competing against Raw, because they will lose. They will lose right now. But in a year, Eric, I said this on the last podcast. I said in 2023, by 2023, AEW will be the biggest wrestling company in the world.
And they'll have John Cena.
Maybe. Fuck. Everybody else is coming to the company. That's the most realistic it's seemed in a while.
Hey, look, I've predicted John Cena for a very long time. Black Stradamus is going to keep going with that prediction. So
here's the thing. RKJ Man, Eric, he's either going to get The Rock at WrestleMania and John Cena at AEW in the same year, or he's going to get neither. Just watch.
Or smoking crack.
Yeah.
Smoking crack right now.
Yeah. I pick it down. You have to do the podcast, but afterwards, yeah.
Yeah,
guys.
I did it before. RKJ be doing
only
that
a year
before.
ago did he stop. During the pandemic, he didn't have access to it.
I didn't have access.
Yeah. Stupid. But it's just, I just think the wrestling business, like I was saying this before these guys came into the company, because it just seems like AEW is just the better product. I was like super excited to watch Dynamite this week. I was like, oh, Dynamite's just, I was at Disneyland all yesterday, so I wasn't able to actually watch it live. But I watched it like this afternoon. I'm like, that was pretty solid show. Like I was excited. You got to see Daniel Bryan, Adam Cole, CM Punk, see what the next rivalries and storylines are going to be, and I'm excited for what's. We might get Daniel Bryan and Kenny Omega at the next pay-per-view. Are you kidding me?
Fuck that. I think we're gonna get it. I think we're gonna get it at Arthur Ashe in 2 weeks, possibly.
Oh, I know. Well, I would hold back on that, but you know what? AEW's done nothing wrong. Whenever they do something, it's like I always go. They always are like, oh, okay, it worked out. It worked out. Yeah, interesting stuff. You guys have any kind of last comments, or just any other comments on the pro wrestling business right now? Because I think we talked about the gist of everything going on, but
I did want to mention one thing.
Yes.
I saw it, and as you guys know, I'm on Twitter. I'm on Black Twitter, Black Wrestling Twitter. I'm on all the Twitters. I want Black talent to rise to the cream of the crop organically, and I don't want them to be forced in a situation. I want Scorpio Sky to rise up organically. I don't want them to be forced. Hobbs, organically. I think we saw a little bit of that last night when CM Punk specifically calling him out and keeping his eyes on CM Punk. I think CM Punk says, hey, I really want to work with Hobbs. But I do agree there needs to be a little bit more diversity on AEW side. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, with me, the diversity thing's always tough with Black wrestlers because there just isn't that many of them compared to white and Mexican and Japanese wrestlers, right? Like there's just more of those, so you're going to get more of those guys inside. Like when you look at AEW's roster, you have 2 Mexican World Tag Team Champions right now. You have a foreign TNT champion, right? And you technically have a Canadian champion in Kenny Omega. But I just think it's like, I agree with you, RKJ, you said it best. They need to organically be put in the position. Like Hobbs is going to be fighting CM Punk. What's better than that besides fighting Kenny Omega at this point? Right? So Powerhouse Hobbs is in the second most watched match. Black as can be, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? And so it just needs to be organic. Big Swole wasn't able to get over in the non-COVID era. Maybe she could get over. Jade Cargill they're trying to get her over right now, right? So yes, AEW doesn't have as much Black talent. I just think that's because WWE just they have a lot of the Black talent. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't, besides in Scorpio Sky is being put on TV every week, right? He's with Dan Lambert. He's not in the top storyline right now, but he's still being put on TV. But I think
we could agree. We went to those, bar wrestling shows back in the day. We saw Scorpio Sky. We said, man, this guy can be a huge star.
Oh, yeah.
And I personally think Scorpio Sky hasn't reached his full potential in All Elite Wrestling. Now, there could be a lot of factors. I know he had an injury and certain other things have happened. But you see him on the tag team every week with Ethan Page, and it's like, well, what are you guys doing? Like, Scorpio Sky needs to be on his own. He needs to be facing a CM Punk later on down the road, or Bryan Danielson. Can you imagine the matches he can have with Adam Cole, Bryan Danielson, CM Punk? Good God. Like, I'm just losing my mind just thinking about it. So, I mean, I think that's the frustration. And I think a lot of Black people, they look at AEW and they want to see it. Now, I don't know if I disagree with you or agree with you about the whole Black wrestlers thing. I think there's enough Black wrestlers out there. They just signed one recently, Lee Morrity, yesterday, Tiger Style. This is a guy who hopefully we'll do an interview with, and I think he's really, really good. He's really, really good, and he's got a lot of potential in AEW. AJ Gray is out there too as well. And there's a lot of other Black talent out there on the independent scene. It's just a matter of getting them into a position where they can organically succeed. Just because you're here, that doesn't mean we're going to push you because of your color. You know what I'm saying? Opportunity was created for everybody to go after that position, regardless of culture, color, creed, gender orientation, or anything of that nature. But if you can organically get over, we will push you. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, a lot of Black people in the organization, they're complaining on Twitter, and they're doing a lot of unnecessary issues, and they're causing issues on the social media. I'm not saying I'm my Uncle Tom. Like, I want Black people to succeed. I want you to succeed.
Okay, Jay, you're not. Yeah, trust me. Like, I thought you might say that, but it's like,
trust me, I want Black people to succeed. I mean, like I have a soul food place I go to all the time. I talk to Nick about it all the time. It's like, and Nick, you tell me all the time, why you care about that place so much? I was like, because it's a Black-owned business.
And I was like, okay, that makes sense.
Black-owned business.
Yeah.
But it has to be natural. Like, I can't go into the soul food place and y'all ain't got oxtails when it's supposed to be Oxtail Saturday. I can't go into the soul food place like that. But if you have oxtails on Oxtail Saturday and you're open on time, guess what? I'm going to be there. So it's the same thing with Black wrestlers. They've got to be able to perform. They got to be able to get over. And then guess what? We will see a shit ton of representation on our televisions.
I agree. I mean, I think that WWE took all the really, really good Black women wrestlers. Okay, Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks are the two best women's wrestlers in the world, in my opinion, and they're in WWE.
Mia Yim too, she's half Black as well.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You know, and like I said, Jade Cargill, Big Swole, they gave her a chance. He just wasn't be able to get over, right? And I think that if you were to ask, who are the top women in AEW, and they also have been pushing Red Velvet. So I do think there's a lot of unnecessary talk about this. I think it stems from the Private Party. I think that's, people think that Private Party is being kind of held down by like Matt Hardy, and that they want Private Party to be higher on the card than the tag team ranks. But it's like, again, we had two Mexican guys that everyone loves won the tag team championships this weekend. It's like, you know, every race can't be happy at once, right? It's like we're saying, we're pro wrestling fans. There's nobody right now that is African American that is in AEW we'd want to see wrestle over CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Adam Cole, Kenny Omega, MJF, the Young Bucks, Penta El Zero Miedo, Rey Fenix. Right? That's just the truth. If you disagree with that, well, you don't know what you're talking about at that point. Because, you know, you know what I'm saying? Maybe Ricochet's the only one that comes to mind that could compete with those guys, and he's not even with the company at this point, right now. And they're going to try to push Powerhouse Hobbs. Ricky Starks is the FTW champion. It doesn't really count, but he's still a champion on the roster, right? So, yeah, I think that there absolutely should be talked about, but not in a negative connotation. I don't think AEW is doing anything racially, or they're not doing anything on purpose to hold down African-American wrestlers. I think it's just the African-American wrestlers that they have, and the ones on the indies haven't been able to get over, like the other guys. Eric, you haven't got an opinion on this. Obviously, some of your favorites are the Lucha Brothers and people like that. You obviously have a Mexican bias, which is fair, right? What is your thoughts on what RKJ brought up, that there is a lack of Black women and men at the top of the AEW card?
I mean, I do agree with RKJ. For me, I just have to know, or I have to look at how they are being booked and what position they are as far as like storyline wise. They just got to have the right storyline to be, pushed to get a title shot or to get a main event, to get in the main event mix. When Kofi Kingston, when he was in the mix, the title mix against Bryan Danielson or Daniel Bryan at the time, it wasn't anything about racially inequality or anything like that. It was something to do with Kofi Kingston just being there for 10 years and never getting the chance to shine or never getting the spotlight. And so that was the thing that was driving him. Bobby Lashley, there was more of a heel kind of thing, but I think a lot of people didn't know that it was anything racially, anything like that. It was Bobby Lashley's timing and the fact that he was with the Hurt Business, which another faction that the Hurt Business was a good faction, and then they also squandered away. So I mean, come on. So Bobby Lashley, So Bobby Lashley, he was in the right spot at the right moment and the right storyline and with the right faction. Kofi Kingston was in the right spot and the right direction and in the right storyline, and the momentum behind it was pretty insane. It was awesome. We were there for it. And so for a lot of these wrestlers, like in AEW, like Big Swole or Red Velvet, Cargo, I think that they just need to be in the right spot, in the right storyline to be pushed. They need to have like the right momentum. Even if they're babyface or heel, they just need to be in the right area. I mean, I think I could say that maybe Red Velvet, I can see her be the AEW Women's Champion. It's just going to take a lot of time, but they just got to be in the right storyline. That's what I think.
Look, here's the situation. So, number one, I do disagree with you about the whole Kofi Kingston thing. Eric, if you do remember on the lead up to that, they started bringing up race just a tad. They didn't mention it, but they said people like you to be world champion, stuff like that. Byron Saxton did kind of mention some stuff about it. They mentioned a little bit, but that's a moot point. The situation with AEW and black wrestlers is that is the most creative space in pro wrestling in years, meaning you can literally just come up with an idea for a feud, go to Tony Khan, say, hey, this is what we got. If it works, Tony Khan will be like, okay, we'll book it on Dynamite or we'll book it on Dark. We'll book it, so if black pro wrestlers are not coming up with creative ideas too as well to push to Tony Khan, that's also an issue too as well. And that's something they've got to do better with themselves. One thing I do respect about Vince McMahon and his relationship with the New Day, his relationship with Bobby Lashley, MVP, other black wrestlers, is they've come up to him and been like, well, what about if we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? And Vince McMahon's been like, yeah, if it works, it works. If it works, he puts it on television. If it doesn't work, then it's like, no, it's not going to work. So if you have a situation where you are in the most creative space in the industry today in the past 20 to 25 years, and you can't figure out a way to work with someone who's going to help you get over and you guys both benefit from it, then that's kind of on you as well.
You also, like, AEW doesn't have a lot of black wrestlers, and they just signed a black wrestler, Lee Moriarty, like RKJ Man said. Who's out there right now that like, as far as African American wrestlers, that like you could go out? Who?
AJ Gray.
Yeah, but he's just an independent wrestler though. There's nothing special about that guy that needs it. Like, are there any top independent talent right now? Because you can't just go steal them from WWE like a lot of these marks on social media think you can do, right? Is there anybody on the independent scene right now, male or female, that is African American that would be super desired by most fans?
Chris Bay.
Without looking at their race, are there any?
Chris Bay, maybe.
Chris Bay. And by the way, Chris fucking Bay is gonna be there in about a year, or he's gonna be with WWE, right? So it's like Chris Bay, but Chris Bay's just in the beginning of his career, right? I don't think he's being racially held down. I think that he's at the beginning of his career. And by the way, I wanted to mention too, I mentioned that the AEW women's division, like half of the talent being pushed right now is African American. Okay, I said Jade Cargill, I said Red Velvet. Nyla Rose is half African American. She's just transgender, so I think that gets thrown out the door, which is not fair to her. And by the way, one of the heads of the company is black. Brandi Rhodes, she's just pregnant. It has a kid. Sorry, guys, like she's not there right now.
Oh, they don't like her, Nick. They don't like her.
That's what I mean, bro.
Black Twitter. I'm on Black Twitter, brother. They don't like her. They don't like her. She says some stuff that pisses them off frequently, and they have an issue with her because they say, hey, you're a black woman. Why are you not bringing in more black talent? And so she went on Twitter, made her statement, and then deleted it. But they don't like her, Nick. I can just guarantee you.
Okay, I won't bring her up again.
They don't like her. Don't bring
All
her
right,
up.
time to end the podcast. Just kidding.
No, but it's a fair point. RKJ Man, glad you brought it to light because it's something that I think a lot of fans they don't look into it that much. Like they don't go, oh, like it's like, oh, why are there not a lot of black hockey players? Oh, well, there's just not a lot of black guys that play hockey. You know, like that's you can help out by putting hockey rinks in black communities and stuff like that, but they still got to play. You know, you still got to like it's so, you know, for me it's like we looked at it and the only one we could think of is Chris Bay that's on the free agency market, and I just think that's because he probably likes being on the independent circuit right now. You know, and is weighing his options and figuring out what company he wants to be. And I don't think that's a racially motivated move by either company. You know, so and I think if the minute Ricochet gets released, whenever that is, he'll probably go to AEW, right? And there you go, top black star, guy probably win the championship, right? But yeah, you got to develop it, and unfortunately there aren't a lot on the roster. But I think WWE took them all, like legit. WWE just has more black wrestlers. That's just what happened. They tried with Lio Rush, and Lio Rush, he quit? Like the next day or something like that.
I'm hearing Tony Khan came out and said that he's been talking to Lio Rush and he'll let him know. You know, he'll let us know what's going on. Look, I just want to say this, okay? If you disagree with us, or if you know of a black wrestler,
please,
who was really good, tweet us. Put it down in the description. Put it down in the comments. Let us know, okay? We'll reach out to them and we'll do an interview with them, okay? I want to know. I want to shout these people out. Like
we'll fucking do an interview with you, bro.
Yeah.
If you are black and you think that there should be pro wrestlers, and your name is not RKJ Man, that you think that you can name and prove us wrong, what we just said on this podcast, please come on, because we're not lying to push down black wrestlers. Okay, we are telling you the truth of what us and a lot of people think, that the top guys in the business in AEW right now that all the fans wanted to see, they're just not black. Like that's just it wasn't on purpose. They just aren't, right? Or they're a different race. You know what I'm saying? And they're just so. That's what I think. You know, that's what we all think.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Well, RKJ, take it away. Let's end this podcast.
Hey man, really quickly, watch our old content as we take over Vegas.
Yes.
With the boycott Goldberg movement, talking Pacquiao, Urgis, and MMA, UFC, how we got kicked off the complex. We saw Nick Khan there, which was frightening for everybody. We saw Triple H, Stephanie, everybody, okay? Like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, raise a glass in the sky and salute the ring generals.